Have you had a fight with your neighbour recently? In this video, we're going to be talking about neighbourhood disputes and how to overcome them as a property investor and a homeowner.
Everybody needs good neighbors.
Now, back in 2018, Emily and I bought our very first investment property. It was on the inner CBD, only a few kilometres north of Brisbane CBD, and the house had a few issues. There was a giant fig tree at the front of this place. It had baby trees growing in the gutter from this fig tree, and pipe issues and water issues from the tree growing at the front of the property. The problem with this situation is that the fig tree was right in the corner of the neighbour's block at the front of the property, but the bulk of the tree was clouding our very first property purchase. Now, the big thing here when approaching a neighbourhood dispute or negotiating the removal of a tree like this is to approach it in a simple and straightforward manner and to always be polite in these situations. Now, the neighbouring property from our very first property purchase was also a rental property. We were actually moving into our first home to do some renovations, and the first thing on our list was to remove this tree, even though it wasn't in our yard. Now, we'd actually budgeted about 10 to 15 grand to remove this tree because it was a monster and we thought it might have issues in the pipe work. So when we were assessing our property to make a purchase and making our renovation budget, we made sure we had a large buffer. So that's the first thing on your list. Make sure you have headroom in terms of the cost of doing remedial works when you're getting things sorted with your neighbour. We then approached the neighbour through our real estate agent and asked them to remove the tree and potentially go 50-50 split, even though it was on their property. For us, this was a major win. The quote came in at about $5,500 to get the tree removed and to have the stump grinded. So we were contributing about $2.5 to $3 grand to have the tree removed. And that was a massive win for us because it was going to be a big deal in terms of allowing light into the home, to stop the dampness at the property, and to stop the gutters getting completely full with leaves and debris. Now, what I see a lot is that people sweat the small stuff. $500, $1,000, $2,000 to have someone come in and do the work to remove these trees on the boundary. Nobody wants to pay it. Try and take a generous approach when you're doing this. Emily and I didn't have to offer 50-50 to have the tree removed, even though it was on their property. We could have tried to say it runs through the power lines, it's on your property, you should pay for the removal of the tree. But for us, it was important to get off on the right foot for our very first property purchase. We'd also budgeted as part of our negotiations in buying the property. So being generous and offering that $2.5 to $3 grand to have the tree removed was the right decision for us. If your numbers are so tight that you can't go 50-50 split for $500, $1,000 or a couple grand to have an issue dealt with, then maybe investing in property is not the right thing for you. You're going to have to ride out these bumps and these situations when it comes to dealing with neighbourly disputes. I also want to share an example of what I've seen in practice in the buyer's agency. We just had a deal where the contract could have fallen through because of issues with a neighbourhood dispute. The dispute wasn't disclosed in terms of the negotiations on the contract, and we found out later into the settlement period that there was actually a neighbourhood dispute between our property that we were buying for an investment for a client and the neighbouring property, again because of tree issues. Now, through some fine work and open discussions between ourselves, I shouldn't tout myself as fine work, but for some fine work from the selling agent, we were able to negotiate the removal of those trees at the cost of the vendor in this situation, and my client was going to pay for the removal of some pool fencing and an old spa. Now, this could have led to a contract falling through because it wasn't noted in the original contract, and the concern for my client is this is going to be an owner-occupied property for himself down the track. So for him, he wanted to get the dispute sorted with the neighbour ASAP and move forward. Now, I've also recently heard of some crazy stories in WA where a person moved into an apartment block and the neighbours were causing issues after they bought the property, and this wasn't originally disclosed to the buyer, and it's caused some issues after the fact. When it comes to trees, fences and boundaries, 99% of the people you deal with are going to be fairly reasonable in these situations. If you come forward and approach them and address the situation head on, obviously not being overly direct, and propose a win-win idea about how you can move forward, this is an easy way to deal with neighbourhood disputes. When you invest in property, you're investing for the long term. It's not a short-term game. So making sure the neighbours on both sides and the rear of the property are happy with what you're doing and what's on the boundaries and how your property is being managed is important. There are absolutely limitations when it comes to these disputes where issues won't be able to be resolved and you'll have to go to a mediation or bring your solicitors or real estate agents together to solve the issue. But for me, a lot of these situations can be handled in a straightforward manner through open discussions and upfront negotiation. So if you spot an issue at a potential property purchase, or you're notified of a neighbourhood dispute that's currently in place, take a look at that situation, problem solve. The way we add value to properties is problem solving, whether it's through problem solving and managing a project to undergo renovations, whether it's problem solving about how to add value over the long term, or problem solving and financing a deal. The game of property investing is largely around problem solving, and neighbourhood disputes form part of that. If you're looking to buy your home in Brisbane or invest in the Southeast Queensland market, book in a free strategy session with myself at purposeproperty.com.au. We'll have a chat about your situation, discuss our process as buyer's agents, and take it from there. Otherwise, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel down below, and click this video over here for more things real estate, renovating, and financial freedom. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.